Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We're back with another In Context. Today is January 11th, 2026. The title of this podcast today is going to be The Evolution of the Arab Zionist Camp. I'm saying that on purpose because I've noticed a massive trend in the last week. If you were to look at the news, you think that the Saudi Arabian EAU are now against each other. Saudi Arabia is exerting its force on the EAU, and there might be a split in the Zionist camp. It is not a breakup. It is not a split. It is an evolution. There's clearly, I see it as Team A and Team B. Team A is the pro-Israeli camp that wants Israel to lead the Middle East, and Team B is the camp that's also pro-Israeli. That's the important part. Also pro-Israeli, but wants to kind of take a role as well in addition to Israel. Did I frame it properly?
Yes. So let's start with the genesis of this fiction. Saudi Arabia evicted UAE from Yemen. And right away, the emotionalists and the superficialists started drumming up that great, the savior of the Muslim Ummah, Saudi Arabia, has came back to its senses. It's great. Everything's going to be great. This is quite foolish. The people who are doing that have been taken for a ride by Saudi Arabia a dozen times before. The Saudi clan has been using them in its nefarious colonial projects since the 50s. For Allah's sake, let's wake up. 75 years of being cheated and used is enough. Let's just review what happened. So UAE and Saudi Arabia have gone into Yemen in a colonial project. Their project was essentially to vanquish the Arab Spring in Yemen. In alliance with Ali Saleh and the Houthis, they vanquished the revolution. The Houthis then rebelled against Saudi Arabia because they wanted more money and more control. And Ali Saleh played the Houthis against his Arab allies in the Zionist camps, Saudi Arabia and UAE. Eventually, when he tried to double-cross the Houthis killed him and took over. Although the Houthis are quite regularly called Iranian agents, that is not true. The tribes in this area have forever been trying to play political arbitrage between Saudi Arabia and other regional powers to get paid. And they have been doing that since the late 50s. You know, the direct father of the Houthis leaders, Badruddin Houthi, was playing this game back in the late 50s. So please, just get some perspective. Yes, the Houthis are willing to play arbitrage now between Iran and Saudi Arabia, but that's a side issue. Saudi Arabia and the UAE are just highway robbers. So each of them got into this. Mohammed Salman, Mohammed Zayed got into this for whatever is in it for them, and under the colonial supervision. Since the beginning, Mohammed Zayed has maintained stronger and closer ties with two lines in Yemen. The Ali Saleh gang, and when Ali Saleh died, his nephew, these guys actually have their money in Abu Dhabi and just follow their money. And a faction of the Southern Yemen nationalists. Those guys think they are better than the people around them because the English colonized them first. And that's an ongoing problem. So there is some natives of Aden and its environs in Yemen who think they are more civilized and better educated and better people because Aden has been an imperial brothel since 1839. While the rest of Yemen was put under colonial control in the late 19th century and early 20th century, so that makes them better. And as a result, they want to revive the quote-unquote communist Southern Yemen. And I'm not joking. This nonsense is true. For the record, the communists of Southern Yemen didn't have a clue about communism. They were just thieves and robbers who used communism to steal the land, including cattle from their neighbors. So back to our discussion. So one faction of those guys, which are the original Sephora, southern Yemen, was always allied to Saudi Arabia. Those are the people who fled southern Yemen when the communist, quote unquote, communist regime was established in 1967. And those people has always had a link to Saudi Arabia and sponsorship by Saudi Arabia. But the UAE got the remnants of the communist regime to work with them. In 2019, there was a breakup between Saudi Arabia and the UAE. UAE officially declared that it's withdrawing. In practice, actually, it transferred its assets to a newly formed Southern Transitional Council made out of the remnants of the communist regime and the nationalists of the British Empire and the likes. Saudi Arabia tolerated that because they'd like to maintain a united front, and because of Gulf Cooperation Council politics, Saudi Arabia would like to maintain the image of its control and leadership of the GCC, and that means they don't fight out with UAE. Then the UAE expanded its control over Yemen. So out of Aden, they hired Western assassins, killed popular leaders, imams of masajid, leaders of Ikhwan in Aden, and the mercenaries later actually made videos bragging about that. And they bought up the remnants of the communist regime and others to make the Southern Transitional Council. In the interest of maintaining this image of united front, when the Saudi Arabia decided to change the so-called legitimate government in Yemen from the ancient and decrepit Abd Rabbu Mansour, they gave some seats to the Southern Transitional Council and the rest to their guys and declared that the legitimate government. In early December, however, the UAE decided to take over Southern Yemen. So they issued orders to their Southern Transitional Council to take it over. Interestingly, the so-called legitimate government didn't fight out. They actually withdrew all the way to almost the borders with Oman and Saudi Arabia. The Mohammed Salman, also known as the PUBG Kid, decided to make a video game of it. So he sent his planes to bomb UAE assets that were being transported to the Southern Transitional Council in Mukalla in a video game type thing, and started bombing the forces of the Southern Transitional Council in Hadramaut. Interestingly, without much fighting, with just skirmishes, within a few days, the forces of the so-called legitimate government that were completely routed out in early December completely routed out the Southern Transitional Council in early January. The reason is these are mercenaries on both sides. And what's in it for them is a salary at the end of the month. So, why die? You get salary to live on it. That's about it. So the wind goes UAE way, over it takes over. The wind goes Saudi Arabia's way, blew Saudi Arabia's way with planes in the skies. It takes over. Great. So officially now, the so-called legitimate government has taken over completely all of the Southern Transitional Council territories, including Aden. Forces are officially under the Southern Transitional Council. These guys, under the legitimate government. These guys, by the way, have strong links with UAE, but they are playing nice with Saudi Arabia because the wind is blowing differently. The UAE has withdrawn from the Yemeni islands it has occupied, including the islands where it put bases and offered access to Israel and the US on both sides of the Gulf of Aden, the entryway into Bab al-Mandab and the Red Sea. So obviously the UAE is pretending that they are playing nice. Essentially, the one thief called up the other thief bluff. And the other guy came short. Mohammed Zayed came short. There is nothing in this for them. These are two thieves. They are fighting over booty, us. It's very stupid for the booty, the loot, to support one thief over the other. So please, let's have two brain cells to rub together. Now, an interesting facet of this is the leader of the Southern Transitional Council, Aydros the Israeli, fled Aden at night to Barbara in Somaliland. And from there, he was taken by the UAE through Mogadishu, the capital of Somal, to Abu Dhabi. Interesting part people should remember. Aden and Barbara were important ports in the colonial empire towards the late 19th century. Another piece of information people should remember, historical piece of information. When the Arab statelets and so-called Muslim statelets condemned the Israeli recognition of Somaliland, only two Arab states stood out as not condemning it: UAE and Bahrain. What people should remember is a third port in the British colonial empire of late 19th century was Bahrain. There are lines in the sand here people need to remember. These are old colonial allegiances, old colonial cultures. They talk to each other. They get each other. So this is not haphazard. So to go back to the issue of the Arab Zionist camp, Saudi Arabia and UAE are founding members of the Arab Zionist camp. Saudi Arabia has long tolerated the Southern Transitional Council. The sudden change in its stance toward the Southern Transitional Council is not merely because Mohammed Zayed has overreached and tried to take over all of Yemen and eject Saudi Arabia and its guys out of it. It is also related to the fact that Mohammed Zayed is supporting Israel on the other side of the Gulf of Aden in Somalia. The Saudis are not happy with that. So does that mean that Saudi Arabia is breaking out of the Zionist camp? No, not in your life. What's happening is the Arab Zionist camp is turning into two teams. Team A, that supports Israel all the way, and that includes obviously the UAE and I believe Jordan, and it looks like Bahrain is moving away from Saudi Arabia towards UAE and to join that team. And Team B, that includes Saudi Arabia and Egypt. But if you look carefully at Team B, you would realize that it's still completely Arab Zionist. It just has a different perspective of what it means to be an Arab Zionist. For example, the second member of the Arab Zionist regime, Egypt, joined Israel when it tried to create an Eastern Mediterranean alliance against Turkey and anything that smells Muslim in the Eastern Mediterranean. So officially that alliance includes, on the record, Greece and Greek Cyprus. Tacitly, it includes Egypt. And you can see it. It's not hidden. So the Egyptian government committed to buy Israeli gas out of the Eastern Mediterranean that was facilitated to exist, to be exploited through this alliance, this breakup of the economic rights in the Eastern Mediterranean. And it committed to buy it not just for use in Egypt, it committed to buy it to export to the rest of the world. Israel doesn't want to create gas liquefaction plants. These are dangerous things that people don't want in their neighborhoods. So Egypt is doing it for them. So Egypt is a founding member, although not very official, but you can see it in their behavior, of this Eastern Mediterranean alliance. On the other hand, the Somaliland venture that Israel is going into is one facet of a developing Eastern Africa alliance. The head here is Israel. The members are Ethiopia and various territorial gangs in Somalia and the UAE. And the targets in this case are directly Sudan and the central Somali government in Mogadishu, and to a lesser degree, Egypt, which sees Ethiopia as a threat. So here you see that Egypt is part of some of the Israeli plans and a target of other plans. What's emerging is this breakup in the Arab Zionist regime, the camp into Team A that sees in Israel full head of the alliance, and they want to fold under its leadership, and those who would like to be selective and to stay under the auspices of the US. This is a result of the fact that Israel, since it started bombing Lebanon, has tried to move strategically into a new position. It wants to become the viceroy of the colonial imperial order in the Middle East. It wants to be a free agent to do whatever it feels important and to the benefit of the imperial order without reference to the US. The US objects to that, doesn't like that, doesn't approve that. Team B of the Arab Zionist Alliance is of this opinion. It doesn't like that. But Team A likes it a lot and would like Israel to be their new sponsor in the imperial order. To see this in perspective, Lindsey Graham, who is a rabid colonialist, racist, whatever you want to call him, yesterday just grabbed Israel violently after 2 weeks of praising them to high heavens. He was 2 weeks ago in Israel and was praising Israel as the greatest ever investment that the US has made, and the shining city on a hill that is the great future of the Middle East, etc., etc., etc. Yesterday, he turned around Israel and grabbed them very heavily. The reason is Netanyahu was singing his usual tunes with an interview with The Economist and said, well, we don't need US support and we're going to win ourselves out of it because we are a great and important country with great economy within 10 years. So Lindsey Graham comes back responding to that video on Twitter and says, well, if you don't need our assistance within 10 years, then we should cut it right away. And, if you don't understand the underlying logic, you don't see where does that come from. What people don't understand is in the imperial order, the US doesn't have partners, equal partners. The most it can accept is junior partners. People who think they are equal partners, but they are not. Like Europe. The US doesn't do partnerships. You can't partner with the US. And this is not Trump. Trump just, says the quiet part loudly. But if you look at the imperial history of the US since World War II, it doesn't play buddies. You are either working for us and we leave you whatever we decide to be your share, we decide. Or you are not part of our alliance and we'll push against you as far as we can and we'll leave you only the things that we cannot take from you. Like what they were doing with the Soviet Union. But there are no middle ground. So Israel thinks that it can do that, doesn't play like this. And that's what Lindsey Graham was saying. You're beautiful, you're great if you stay under my sponsorship, within my purview. But if you get too big for your breeches, you'll be cut down to size.
Where does Qatar fall into this?
Qatar is not in the Arab Zionist camp. Qatar is in the traditional Arab agent camp. That camp wants to stay in the old mold of 20th century clientism, where the governing elite worked as a mediator between the imperial mandate and the local population. So it delivered whatever the imperial order wanted, while giving the local population the fiction that they are free and prosperous.
Okay, how about this new business of Turkey and Saudi Arabia making some kind of security alliance? Does that put?
We have to make a distinction here between the relationship between Turkey and Pakistan and the rest of the business. Turkey and Pakistan are obviously in military alliance. When Pakistan and India went into war, it was very obvious that Turkey was on India's side and Pakistan's side, and India got the message and responded by moves towards Israel and Greece. Some of these were existing before the war, some of these happened after the war, and this is very obvious. typically people should stop reading political statements and take them as anything. You don't follow their words, you follow their steps, their actions. Follow the money, follow the weapons, follow who supports who actually when push comes to shove. Not what they say. That also goes to the business of Saudi-Pakistan alliance, and Pakistan is going to offer a nuclear protection to Saudi Arabia, all of that nonsense guff. Pakistan is an American colony. The US doesn't allow this kind of thing. Actually, when people in the US who do not like the US sponsorship of Pakistan try to raise a fuss, they say this is a Muslim bomb because they want to put Pakistan in the American doghouse. So get alive, guys. A Muslim bomb is not something the US will entertain within its empire. Now, the Pakistani government needs money from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia needs to look great, and that stupid PUBG kid in Riyadh likes to talk big. So he calls his empire, just like Gaddafi, the Great Saudi Arabia, as if adding the word great at the end will make anything great. Anyway, so they like to talk big, but there's no truth to this. There is no physical motions. Now, there is something actually serious going on. It seems that Saudi Arabia is trying to buy weapons for the Sudanese army from Pakistan. That could be, but that's not the same thing. That's not an alliance. Same thing goes for Turkey and Saudi Arabia. Turkey is not within the American empire, but it does not antagonize it on the other hand. So I don't think much of that will get very far. You could also see that Turkey and Saudi Arabia are not on the same team in Syria. So if you look at the Saudi assets in Syria running around, you would notice that they actually go at cross purpose with the state in Syria, and the state in Syria is supported by Turkey. The state in Syria keeps thanking Saudi Arabia and the UAE, but you know how truthful is this by the fact that they're thanking UAE? And that is a joke. The UAE actually is the source of a lot of the trouble that's happening in Syria.
Makes sense. I think we got it.
جزاك الله خير. السلام عليكم.